What's going on, guys? And this has been a long time coming. I'm so sorry I took like a 3 or 4 month hiatus. I just needed some time to figure out some stuff with me and see who I am as a person. But now that we are in the off season, or about to be in the off season, we have the AFC and NFC championships this weekend. Which, I mean, I missed my opportunity to predict that stuff, but anyways, here we are. I am now gonna take a look, and we're gonna do 32 picks. So I'm gonna have the first pick of the second round since the Dolphins forfeited theirs, and I'm gonna do a no trades, um, no trade scenario here for this, just to make it easy. We'll have trades later on in the season, or in the off season, and do some free agency predictions and free agency reviews, etc. But I just want to try and chat about this for a few minutes because I think that this is very important, and I kind of want to dive back into doing some football stuff. But without further ado, let's dive into my first mock draft. In case you can't tell, it's going to be the NFL Mock Draft Simulators, the website I'm going to use, and let's see what we can come up with. And I already pretty much know exactly how I'm going to go with this, just the way that I am. But coming in at number 1 overall, I'm going to have the Chicago Bears take Jalen Carter out of Georgia. He's an amazing defensive tackle, and the Bears need all kinds of help. And since in this scenario there's no trade downs or anything, I'm just going to give who I think is the best. Jalen Carter is easily one of the best players in this draft. I could also see the Bears taking Will Anderson Jr., but I think with what the Bears are looking for, because they'll likely trade out of here, as everyone is saying, then we will see them take a defensive player, because that defense was just bad. At number 2 overall, I'm going to have the Houston Texans taking Bryce Young. He's a little bit of a smaller quarterback, It's a little different, I would say, for some teams, and a little bit fearful. But look at Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. Even though Kyler hasn't played fantastic, and now he has an ACL tear, so he'll be out for a while. I think other than this season with Russell Wilson as well, I think both those players are very good, and they have the potential to be even better. And I think Bryce Young, while there is a bit of concern with his height and weight, I think that with the way that the NFL rule book is set up currently, I think that this is going to be pretty much how it is for right now, and it's going to be just the way it works. So I think this could also be CJ Stroud. Bryce Young is just such a good quarterback. I usually had CJ Stroud as my number 1, but just watching Bryce Young play recently and diving a little bit deeper into his tape, I feel like it's a little bit more important to have him at QB1 for right now, but I could also see CJ Stroud going in. Now, moving into number 3, we have a team that's also in need of a lot of help. I'm going to give them Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama. He could easily be the best player in this draft. I think that he has the potential to be an outstanding player, and who even knows what's going to happen with him if he doesn't be taken at number 1, or if, he's available. I think the Cardinals are going to for sure take him. He's a fantastic edge rusher. He's absolutely amazing. He's been a Heisman finalist every year. He's been in college, and I just can't wait to see what he does on an NFL team. And the Cardinals, with the loss of J.J. Watt, they just need all kinds of help, especially after Chandler Jones was gone. I think that this team needs all kinds of help to be fixing with them. And moving on to number 4 now, we have the Indianapolis Colts, and this is where I'm kind of up in the air on a couple of players. But I think with how the board has fallen so far, I think I'm going to give the Colts CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. He is definitely not the best quarterback. I think could easily be a toss-up for number 1 or number 2. I mean, he's not the best, but he could be. But he showed a lot of potential against the best defense in college football in Georgia. And while it wasn't all his fault they lost, or even slightly his fault at all that they lost, because they should have won that game and gone to the national championship, I think that CJ Stroud could fit wonderfully in Indianapolis. He's going to finally be looking to stop that quarterback carousel that they've been dealing with for the last few years. Moving on to number 5, I'm going to give the Seattle Seahawks Tyree Wilson. I think that he is an outstanding edge out of Texas Tech. He's such a good player to watch, and he has all kinds of potential to be one of the best edge rushers in this class. This class is super, super deep in edge, and I think that he's going to do really, really good on a team that could always use a little bit of extra edge help. They have Boye Mafe, who played pretty well this season, and other than that, I don't even know who their edge rushers are off the top of my head, but he's fantastic, Tyree Wilson. Yes, he plays at Texas Tech, which is in the Big 12, which is meh at best, but I think that he's a very good player, and people have been talking about him for actual months, and he's a very good player. Moving on to number 6, I think based on how the board's fallen, this could be a couple of different players, but I'm going to give the Lions Brian Brees, the defensive lineman out of Clemson. I think that this could be a corner for sure, but I don't actually see this being a quarterback or like a wide receiver or a running back or anything. I think that based on how the board has just fallen, they could always use a little bit of extra help on the interior, and they have the potential to be a very good team, but with the way that the board's fallen, I think that giving them the help that they need on the interior is going to be very useful for them. And we do know that Dan Campbell likes to build up in the trenches, so why not continue that trend? And since you do have 2 first-round picks, why not try and grab another quarterback why not try to grab a quarterback who's fallen down the board maybe a little bit later? You don't really need to take him right now. And anyways, moving on to number 7. This could be all kinds of different players, in my opinion. But I think based on how the board has fallen so far, looking at some of the players that we have here, this could be very good if you're a Raiders fan. And I'm actually going to give them a quarterback because I think Derek Carr is going to be gone. And, I mean, for right now, I think the best quarterback to give them would be Will Levis. But, you know what? Yeah, I'll give him Will Levis. Why not? Will Levis out of Kentucky. He had a couple of games that he was a little bit iffy on. And if I was looking at a player such as, like, looking back at the quarterbacks who's available, like Hendon Hooker, who, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, I would have probably seen him gone here. Max Duggan could maybe go here as well. DTR could also possibly go here. DTR is a very, very good quarterback, but I think he's going to be falling later on down the board. Sean Clifford, I don't think is like one of the only players who won't go in for sure in the first. Same with Tanner Morgan looking here, but I mean, Max Duggan I don't think is a first-round pick, but depending on which quarterbacks are gone, I could see this one being a possibility, but if Hendon Hooker wouldn't have gotten hurt, he would have been the pick here for sure. But I think Will Levis is just the best overall quarterback available at this time. I think that he's a very, very good player. He shows a lot of athleticism and a lot of upside, but I'm not entirely sure what the Raiders would do if they were here. I guess we just have to wait to see if Derek Carr ends up getting traded. If he doesn't, cool. If he does, yes, we'll see what happens. Moving on now to the Falcons at number 8, excuse me. We have all kinds of options to give them here. They could really use some defensive line help. They could really use cornerback help. Tackle is all right, I guess. Wide receiver, they don't really have the room or anyone who's a good, wide receiver right now. But I think I'm going to give them Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. He was an absolutely outstanding corner, and he's a very large corner. That he's, I think, like 6'1 or 6'2 or 6 foot, something like that, and has very long arms, which is like most of the corners in this group. And I think that he could be a very good player in the right system. Moving on to number 9, now we have the Carolina Panthers, and this is a team again that I think could take a quarterback, but I just don't see or any other position. They could use some edge help for sure. And honestly, because of the loss of Christian McCaffrey, I could see them taking Bijan. There's all kinds of players that they could take. You know what? I'm going to give him Bijan Robinson. I know it's a very high pick for him, but this probably won't be the pick. But I think with a player that's as good as Bijan Robinson, and you had D'Onta Foreman in the backfield, who, yes, he had a 900-yard season, but I don't see them being able to repeat that. And as you fall down later down the board, I'm pretty sure that you could see them take a quarterback. Looking here, we have Anthony Richardson, who's a project pick. I think he could be fantastic, but I just don't see him being able to be taken this high by the Panthers. Maybe if he's available in the second, they'll take him, but as you'll see later, I don't have him being available in the second. And I just think for now, it's the best odds for them. Now looking at number 10, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to give him Joey Porter Jr., the corner out of Penn State. He's a very famous cornerback. He's the son of former cornerback or linebacker Joey Porter Sr., obviously. He's very good. I think that because they probably won't be able to keep James Bradberry for right now, I think it's just the best option for them. And I could see it being very important for this team. Looking at the Titans now, there's three players in particular that I'm looking at. It's Quentin Johnston out of TCU, Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State, and Jordan Addison. But I think I'm going to go with Paris Johnson Jr. for this because the Titans' offensive line was just atrocious last season, and I think that it would be very important for them to have any kind of offensive line help. And for Houston, if you're Houston right now, you are excited. Look at this, the way that this board has fallen. You have a possible top 5 talent in the draft still available. You have Jordan Addison available. I think it's going to be Myles Murphy here if this is the way that it falls, though. You got your quarterback of the future earlier in the draft, and now you're going to take an edge rusher that could be fantastic. It's easily got to be the pick for me, I think, just based on how the board's fallen. Because he is a very good player, and he could go to a lot of different teams, but I think that it's just important he goes, or like that the players that we have seen so far go. Like, for example, I think Bijan Robinson is more of a luxury pick, but because of the loss of Christian McCaffrey and D'Onta Foreman possibly not being able to finish it, who I do think Bijan is going to be a first-round pick, I just don't know where he's going to go. And looking around, you have Brian Brees, who I think is just better overall. Tyree Wilson, I think, is a better player. I just think that this is the way that this sport has fallen is really helping out Houston right now. Look, moving on to the Jets, I am going to have them take Broderick Jones, a huge offensive tackle out of Georgia. Guy's an absolute monster and definitely needs to be taken if you're the Jets. They have all kinds of issues, and you're not going to have Dwayne Brown play for yourself much longer. So, it's going to be the pick for me. Moving on to the Patriots, I'm going to have them take Cam Smith, the corner out of South Carolina. If you know Bill Belichick, you know that he is going to be wanting to look for corner help. Yes, you had a couple of really good corners taken earlier in the draft, and even in last year's draft for the Patriots, but I think that they just want more help. Their corners were bad. They could also use a wide receiver and possibly another running back, maybe some offensive line help, but I think corner or linebacker would be their top needs, just based on what I've seen so far. And then we have the Packers at 15, and based on what we have seen with the Packers do in their history, I'm going to give him Michael Mayer. I think that he has the potential to be one of the best receiving threats in this class. I think he could be very, very good. But the Packers just don't take wide receivers in round 1. It's sad, and I'm going to be realistic here. They just don't. I think that it's very important for the Packers to get somebody, though, because Mercedes Lewis is getting up in age, and you have Robert Tonyan, who's no longer under contract. It's just the way that I think that they could go. They could easily take a receiver here, though, but depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers, they could also possibly look at getting some other sort of help. They could also use offensive linemen. There's all kinds of players that they could get. But I think Michael Mayer would be a good fit in the Packers offense. Now, if you're Washington, you are ecstatic with how the board has fallen. A lot of people could see Keely Ringo being your corner number 1, but I'm actually going to give him Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. Probably a little bit too high for some people's liking, but I think that he is a fantastic corner. He played really, really well at Illinois, which is not a very big school, so being able to watch it at all is pretty ecstatic for some people. And I just think it would be a good fit. They could always use corner help. It's been a little bit rough for them in their secondary, but I mean, I like what we see so far with this fit. Now, if you're the Steelers or Steelers fans such as myself, you are even more ecstatic. Peter Skoronski, he won an award that's usually given for only interior defensive linemen and offensive linemen. I can't remember what it's called, but they need help on offensive tackle. Their offensive line is terrible. And with Kenny Pickett looking as good as he did last year without having the best offensive line, I think if you give him a good offensive line, maybe another weapon later on in the draft, and then you look to build that defense later in the draft, I think the Steelers could be a sneaky good team next season. But I think that getting a big tackle such as Peter Skoronski would be a perfect fit. And if you're the Lions now, as we move on to number 18, we're looking around, and there's not very many players that you could look at, personally. In my opinion, this could be a good trade down spot, I think, grab some more picks, but if we look back earlier, I gave him Brian Brees, the defensive lineman out of Clemson. And, you know, we could take a look and see what's happening. You know, I don't really, looking up ahead, there's all kinds of players. I think Brian Branch could be a good fit. I think JSN could be a good fit. Anthony Richardson could be a good project pick. But I think I'm going to give him Trenton Simpson, the linebacker out of Clemson. I think that he could be very improving, or help improve that linebacking core very well. Because you have Alex Anzalone, who's an outside or a middle linebacker who's not very good. You have some rotational players that were drafted in like the 7th, which are fine. But, I mean, Trenton Simpson could also play corner, he can play slot corner, he can play edge. He's a very, very good player out of Clemson. And now looking at Tampa Bay, I think that this is where people get a little bit controversial and a little confused. And I think Anthony Richardson is going to go here. I think that he is a project quarterback, and I think he is a very, very good player, and we could see this player be one of the best quarterbacks in the league in a few years. Yes, he has a lot of downside so far, such as he's not been he hasn't played very many seasons. He's played one in college football, but he's very mobile. He's a very, very athletic quarterback, and he has the potential to be fantastic. And I know, like, people are going to say, why don't you take a wide receiver? Quentin Johnston is still on the board, or a safety, or maybe more offensive line help, or a corner. I just feel like with how the board has fallen, I think that, especially if Tom Brady leaves, I think they're going to be looking to draft a quarterback. And I think Anthony Richardson being the best quarterback available, let's look again. Hendon Hooker was injured. Tanner McKee wasn't very impressive. You have DTR, who I think is severely underrated on this. Stetson Bennett, who only looks good because the Georgia defense is able to keep teams on the or off the field, and the teams that they play have not been very good. John Clifford, again, not very many quarterbacks draft eligible or who have declared for the draft this season. So I just think that looking at it, Anthony Richardson has the best upside, and it's a risk, but I think it's very important risk, especially if Tom Brady ends up leaving, or even if he doesn't, it could still be cool. Now, if you're Seattle at number 20, what do you think, or what would you take here? You have tackles, you have edge. We addressed it earlier with Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. I'm going to give him Kelee Ringo. I think that secondary was very, very, very bad. Yes, they have Trayvon Mullen, and he was very good, but a lot of the other corners just weren't. And Jamal Adams is bad. Or not, like, he's just a blitzing corner, and or safety, and he was hurt this season, so I just think that he could be, like, you could use a little bit of extra help in the secondary. Moving on to number 21, this is where I'm going to have the first receiver go off the board. I'm going to have the Southern California boy stay in town and go with Jordan Addison. I think that if you have players here who could be, if you have another wide receiver to add, because I love Josh Palmer, I love Keenan Allen, even though he's getting old, Mike Williams as well. He's had some injury concerns. I think if you keep Jordan Addison here and you give him Justin Herbert and you give Justin Herbert some more weapons, I think we could see this team start to do really well. I could also see them taking maybe some offensive line or possibly a defensive player here, but I think that Jordan Addison would be a fantastic fit for the Chargers. Moving on to number 22, we have the Baltimore Ravens here, and as a Steelers fan, I am not very hyped about the way that the board has fallen for them, but I think I'm going to give him JSN. I think that even though JSN has missed the full season last year with a hamstring injury that kept him out, I think the potential of him playing at a high level, especially if he goes to Baltimore, would be fantastic. You got to give Lamar Jackson more weapons. You have like a 35-year-old Deshaun Jackson playing wide receiver for you. Rashad Bateman's been injured. And you just don't have Devin Duvernay as wide receiver, but you don't really have any other catchers or good ball catchers other than Mark Andrews and J.K. Dobbins. I just think that they could use a little bit of help, and I want Lamar Jackson to be back to his elite form. I think he's easily a top 15, if not top 10 player in the league, and he's severely underrated, but I think that it's important to give them another wide receiver. Now moving on to Minnesota, I'm going to give them Clark Phillips here. This one was very easy. Their defense was terrible this season, and I think that giving them another corner to help an aging Patrick Peterson would be very important. And just based on how the board's fallen, I don't see them needing Quentin Johnston. They could take Brian Branch or maybe Osiris Torrance to try and help their offensive line. Antonio Johnson could also go here. It's just the way that I see it so far. I think Clark Phillips is a much better fit at corner. And if we even look at the other corners that are available at 23, Garrett Williams could also be good. Eli Ricks is a good fit too, I think. Trevius Hodges Tomlinson is also a decent fit from TCU. But I just don't see very many players. Tyreek Stevenson is somebody that I'm going to react to a mock draft later on this week, I think. But he's a player that's been flying up mock draft boards, and it's been kind of crazy how much he's been flying up, but I just don't really see a lot of players here that I think would be nearly as good as Clark Phillips. He's an outstanding corner from Utah, and I think he could be a very good fit in the Minnesota defense next season. Now we have Jacksonville at number 24, and I think because they're getting Calvin Ridley next season, and they have Zay Jones, who's been popping off, Christian Kirk, who's been popping off, I think that I'm going to be looking at a different position for them. I'm going to give him Antonio Johnson. I think he's a little bit better than Brian Branch, and I think that you could just use always a little bit more help in the secondary. I just think it's a good fit. I could also see them taking possibly B.J. Ojulari, or possibly a small receiver such as Jalen Hyatt, or maybe a defensive lineman, or a linebacker. There's just all kinds of players I could see them taking. And this is where, if you're the Giants, you're freaking out and immediately calling. And with your pick, TCU's Quentin Johnson is going to go here. They have no wide receivers that are really good. Isaiah Hodges was receiver 1. I think that Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are both going to be staying, so I think that this could be a very good fit. You get more weapons for Daniel Jones, who could end up being like Josh Allen and popping off majorly. As we saw this season, he's been playing at a very, very good level. Yes, he got blown out by the Eagles, but I don't really blame him. It's been pretty good. So overall, I think this is a wonderful fit. Now moving on to Dallas at 26, I'm going to give them Osiris Torrance from Florida. I think that they could use a lot of offensive line help badly. You could also possibly be looking at a wide receiver, or a running back here, such as Jamar Gibbs, or maybe another edge to complement Micah Parsons and B.J. Ojulari. Maybe another wide receiver, because having a wide receiver would really, really help, especially in that, as we saw in the 49ers game. I just think that their offensive line is not fantastic. They have 2 really good tackles, and I mean, otherwise, they don't really have much going for them. Moving on to number 27, I'm giving the Bills Brian Branch. We just saw a bunch of injuries happen to a depleted Bills secondary already, and I think that it's very important that they address it and fix it, because they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. But I just think that the way that the board's falling, you have to take a safety, and Brian Branch could also play slot corner, and maybe even some linebacker. He's a very good overall player from Alabama. I just think that based on what's been happening in the divisional round with the Bills, I think that this was really important, and this is a position that they need. Now, moving on to Cincinnati, I'm giving them B.J. Ojulari. I've been I've been mocking them offensive line, but their offensive line has been playing very, very good. And I just think that B.J. Ojulari is too good of a player to not go this high. I think he would be very, very good underneath, or to complement Sam Hubbard, and I just think that if you have teams double teaming Sam Hubbard, B.J. Ojulari could thrive in Cincinnati. Overall, that's going to be the pick for me. And now, if you're the Broncos, this is going to be very easy in my opinion. I'm going to go Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. They need help with tackle and interior offensive linemen as well, but I just think that it's very obvious what they're going to do. They traded away Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins for a first-round pick, and they could even take like Nolan Smith or Isaiah Foskey here, maybe some linebackers. I don't know. I just think that their offensive line has played terrible this season. Moving on to Kansas City, I again am at a very weird position with them because I don't actually know who they want, but I think giving them Noah Sewell out of Oregon, yes, it's kind of a weird pick because you still have Nolan Smith and Isaiah Foskey, but I think that their linebacking core could use a lot of help, and I think they're very good on edge right now. Yes, these picks, or these 2 players, would be very good to help them out, but I just feel like, based on how the board's fallen, I think that it's going to be best if they take another linebacker just to help them out. And then we come into the Eagles, who I think will win the Super Bowl this year. Spoiler alert. And you know what? Why not improve that defense? I'm going to give Nolan Smith. I think that Nolan Smith is a fantastic edge rusher. I think he could easily go down lower, but basically around here. I just think that based on what these teams have in 2019, you just see these teams do not need edge that much, in my opinion, at least. Maybe Dallas. I just think that B.J. Ojulari would be a better fit than Nolan Smith. He's still a very good player, and that's not to take away from how good he is. But I just think that they don't really need the help. And then the final pick of the first round, we have all kinds of players that we could look at here. Kayshon Boutte, Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Andre Carter out of Army, Luke Van Ness. And I think that with the first pick of the second round, I think I'm going to have the Steelers take... Well, I don't even know, but I'm trying to look and see what I'm thinking. I had them take a tackle earlier. Actually, no, I know exactly what I'm going to do for him. I'm going to have him take Garrett Williams out of Syracuse. Eli Ricks could also have been the pick here, or DJ Turner, or Emmanuel Forbes, but I haven't really watched enough of Emmanuel Forbes' tape to know if he's actually should be ranking this high. But yeah, I think that based on what we have, these are the players that will likely go. I think that this pick could be a little bit different based on what we see, and we just have to wait until draft time. But I just think that this is where we're at so far. And it's going to be very, very cool to see what we get later on in the season. But that's going to be about all I got for my first mock draft of 2023. I'll be trying to do more later on in the season as we get through free agency. I'll be doing some free agency reactions. And I'm debating if I want to try and bring back a franchise series in Madden or even do any more rebuilds. I think I missed my opportunity and had to take for when I took my break. So let me know on Twitter if you guys want me to bring back a franchise series. But that's going to be about all I got. Take it easy.